man, and welcome to Pulse, the very first episode. This is a space to reflect on conducting, music making, and the decisions that go into creating a fantastic performance. I'm going to be with you every week at this time to just share a little bit of the activities that I do to prepare myself to conduct. And I don't want this to be a lecture. I don't want this to be a masterclass. I really want this to be a space where I can share ideas with you. I really hope that you'll write questions and comments in the chat as we go along. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can share together about this amazing art form. So I thought this evening the best thing we could do was to really just have a sort of general overview about what conducting is. And I'd be really interested to know what you think it is. So if you've got your experiences that you can share with us, please do put that in the chat. Any questions you have, I've already received some questions over the past few days. But I thought we would start really at the very beginning. So to ask ourselves the question, what is conducting? To me, we could just look at that scientific definition of what a conductor is. And effectively, it's a facilitator of energy between one thing and another, and that flow of energy running really smoothly. So for me, in the musical context, taking a musical score and somehow transmitting the energy from the composer's written markings through my being to the musicians, and then hopefully effectively through to the public, is the goal of a great conductor. And it sounds easy to facilitate, but it is just so difficult. So what makes a great conductor? It's such a holistic thing. That, to me anyway, it's such a holistic thing. And I like to kind of describe it in a motto: head, heart, and hands. And I feel like all three of these things need to be working together for it to really work effectively. So, you know, this doesn't just have to apply for conducting. This can apply to any profession. It can apply to anyone who's a musician. And I hope this will be an interesting session for those of you who maybe that you don't really know anything about sort of the art of conducting. This could be completely sort of foreign to you. I mean, I meet people all the time who ask me, what do you do? But for me, a great conductor can combine deep thinking, what they think about the music, with deep feeling. They're really connected to the feeling of the music, and they can put those two things together through their physicality and transmit that to an ensemble. And for those of you who are conductors, I'd be interested in your thoughts with that. Please just write something in the chat, write a question, or share your thoughts on what you think a great conductor is. To me, these three things, the head, the heart, and the hands, have to be working together to create, a fantastic experience for our ensembles. So I always ask people, what are you strongest at? Are you somebody who really feels the music? Are you a feeling musician? Does all your passion come out when you're making music? But perhaps on the technical side of things, you get so passionate that physically you struggle to convey the music. Or are you somebody who just loves geeking out over the details of the music? You really like the intellectual side of studying music, of learning about the composer, learning about the piece, and you really sort of get your head into the music. But you struggle to connect with your emotions and convey those to other people. Or maybe you're somebody who can move super well. You've learned all the technique, you've learned all the movements, you've got a really good posture, you can stand really well, you've got no issues on that side of things, but you really struggle just to sit down and go really deep with the music. So we all have our strengths and weaknesses. So I ask all of you, what are your strengths? Are you a feeling musician? Are you a thinking musician? Or are you somebody that loves the technicality? the hands, because all three of these things in a great conductor have to be working in tandem perfectly to really transmit what we want to the orchestra, but ultimately to the audience. So, I come across people all the time who ask me, so you're a conductor, so, what do you do? I could flippantly answer the question by saying, I study scores. Because the thing is that what the general public see, which is that conductor standing on the podium waving their arms around, is really just the tip of the iceberg. Such a small fraction of what a conductor does is the actual performance itself, standing there in front of the public. I don't know, I wouldn't like to put a percentage on it, but it's an incredibly small percentage of our time as a conductor that is spent doing that. Maybe then if we just come slightly below the surface, the next amount of time spent is rehearsal with your ensemble. But the bulk of that iceberg that we see under the water is the time spent alone with your own thoughts, with the score, preparing to be in front of an ensemble. And that time, it just takes up so much of a conductor's time. So I always describe what a good conductor is as an introverted extrovert. You really do have to be happy spending hours and hours of your time alone in your office, in your study, just probing deep, asking questions, being happy to be by yourself and search and discover things in the score. Yeah, somebody's already said, damn, being a conductor must be so hard. Well, I think it can be for so many people, because we just have to spend all this time alone trying to grapple with how we're gonna convey this music to an orchestra. So it does take an introverted person who's happy to spend many hours alone and is happy to look within to really get to grips with some of this amazing music that we as conductors get to share. But then on the other hand, we need to then be happy to go in front of a huge ensemble and be able to galvanize a room of individuals and share this music through a physical body language. You can't be shy when you're on the podium in front of 80 to 100 people. You have to be able, something needs to switch on inside you, and you need to be able to convey your love and passion for the music. So I'm sure when many people see conductors, they probably think that they're huge extroverts. But in my experience, most conductors are highly introverted people, especially the good ones. And actually, many of the greatest conductors were incredibly introverted individuals. They just have this burning desire to share the music that they've studied, that they love so much. There's just something inside them that just kind of drives them to actually stand in front of an orchestra and let it out. I mean, in any other situation, they probably would absolutely hate to be in front of so many people. But in this situation, it's just this desperate need to have to share music with people and get it out. So that's why I would say that the best conductors really are introverted extroverts. So we've got these two aspects that I feel are really important. So for those of you who've just joined, I've already covered the fact that really what we think about, what we're feeling, and then how we convey it through our body, the head, the heart, and the hands need to be in complete synthesis. They need to be completely, working together as one for a conductor to be really, really fantastic. But also the life of a conductor demands a really great conductor to have the personality of an introverted extrovert, to be able to spend many hours alone, but then to be able to go in front of an ensemble and galvanize that group of individuals. I'd love to know other people's thoughts on what they think makes a great conductor. And if you do have any, please do share it in the comment box. It's great to see people joining. So I thought, as this is the first session, I would just give everybody a sort of brief outline of the sort of activity of a conductor. Not everybody's activity is going to be the same. You know, many conductors work in different situations, they're working with different ensembles, but I'm going to kind of share a little bit of my experience, particularly working with orchestras and instrumental ensembles. And the kind of scenario I'm going to share with you is not just a one-off. There's many projects like this that are going on simultaneously, but the process for each project kind of operates in the same way. So I hope this gives you a kind of brief overview of what a conductor's activity is like from sort of the very start all the way through to the finished product. And then over the coming weeks, I'd love to go into more detail about these different areas. And of course, if there's anything that you particularly would like me to talk about in the coming weeks, I'd love to be able to go into more detail and answer your questions and get other people's thoughts. I'm also hoping over the coming weeks to be able to actually go live in situations where I might be in a rehearsal situation, I might be about to do a concert, I might be teaching some of my students that I work with through the International Conducting Academy. So I hope you're really going to get to see so many different sides of the art of conducting, and I hope that you'll share with me as we go on this journey your activities and your thoughts that we can bring into this discussion. There we go. Well, thanks for coming. Take care. So basically, let's go through this. I'm going to give you a kind of rough scenario now of what maybe one project that a conductor might be invited to do might look like. Obviously there's so many, and maybe we'll get another scenario another week, but for example now, you might be invited by an organisation to conduct a concert which takes place over, say, 1 week of duration. So imagine in this week there might be 2 or 3 days of rehearsal, followed by a concert, or possibly 2, maybe 3 concerts, something like that, all done in 1 week. Now, the conductor might be invited to do this through many different channels, and we can talk about that at some point, but effectively you'll be invited to go somewhere to conduct. And the first situation obviously is this is done most likely through sort of email correspondence. You have to decide, of course, if you actually want to take the engagement. So the first part of the process is actually a negotiation. If you've got the capital to negotiate, you might get an opportunity that you could never turn down. It could be an amazing opportunity that could advance your career. You're certainly not going to turn it down. There might be some other opportunities that might come in that you might consider. You might have to look at, where it's taking place, the group in question. Maybe they've asked you to do certain kind of repertoire. You might not be interested in it, or it might interest you. So there's quite a lot of factors that go into actually accepting an opportunity. But for this sort of scenario now, let's assume we've accepted the opportunity. So what happens from here? It obviously depends when the concert project is actually going to take place. Sometimes concert projects can be given to you with, say, 2 years, 3 years notice. Many organisations plan their events years in advance, but many opportunities come in, within a year, within 9 months, 6 months. It could even be incredibly short notice. It could be within a week. Sometimes the call comes in a day before. It just really depends on the scenario. But depending on the scenario, you get the invitation and you have to decide what you're going to do from the moment of acceptance of the invitation to the moment of the first rehearsal. this is the first period of work for a conductor, because from the moment you accept the invitation to the moment that the first rehearsal is about to take place is the time when you have to prepare the music to the absolute best of your ability. So you arrive at that first rehearsal knowing the music as well as you possibly can by then. So depending on the amount of time you've got, the conductor has to organise themselves. They have to know, okay, how much time do I need to learn the different repertoire? It obviously depends what repertoire it is. And it also depends at this point in time if the orchestra has even decided on the repertoire. Many times you'll be invited and the repertoire will have already been decided for you. So as soon as you accept the engagement, you know what you've got to study, what you've got to prepare, so you can start to plan to prepare that. But many times the acceptance of the engagement happens and then there's a negotiation and a conversation about repertoire. Sometimes the concert organisers have some ideas of repertoire, depends on the orchestra or the ensemble, maybe pieces that they haven't played for a while. If it's a youth orchestra, it might be also determined on the sort of ability of the orchestra. And then there'll be a conversation back and forth between you and the administration, normally via email, about the repertoire choices. And this can be quite a challenge to find repertoire that both you and the organisation would like to do. All conductors have kind of, a bucket list of pieces they love to do. I have repertoire that I love to do. I'd love to know what repertoire many of you love to perform. That might be, you might be somebody who's really into contemporary music. That might be your passion. There might be certain composers that you love. We lost connection, but I think I'm back. Good. Hi everybody, I'm back. So fingers crossed this is going to continue to work. Thanks for staying with me. And this is our first episode of Pulse. So far we have talked about what makes a great conductor. And now I'm sort of going through the scenario, a rough scenario of how it works from the beginning of acceptance of a concert project through to completion. So we've accepted the project. Now we're in discussions about repertoire. And this is something I'd love to talk about more with you over the coming weeks. I'm sure for all of you who are conductors or who are working in this field, choosing repertoire can be a challenge. So this is always an ongoing discussion with the concert organisers, but hopefully at some point you will come to a decision about repertoire. And it's super important to get that right. So that's one of the things, along with the study process, because obviously at this point in time you're also sort of figuring out how you're going to study the music and prepare it ready for that first rehearsal. There'll also be other things that you'll need to be in contact with the organisation about. And maybe I'm going to leave some things off, but if any of you want to write in the chat anything that you can think of. Another aspect that we always have to think about during this period is the rehearsal schedule. Depending on the organisation you're going to conduct, they may have a sort of standard number of days and times that they like to rehearse, but you'll normally be given some kind of responsibility over what you'd like to rehearse on in different sessions. Obviously, if you have a soloist joining, you may need to decide when the soloist will come to work with the orchestra. If a chorus is involved, there'll be dialogue with the chorus master and maybe with the chorus manager to decide, when's the chorus rehearsals going to happen. Different things like that. There's so many logistics, and that will also be taking up a conductor's time during the period before they arrive to start work with the musicians. Another very important aspect and person that you may need to contact during this time is the librarian or whoever's responsible for organising the music for the ensemble. Conductors, so many things going on before you've even arrived to conduct. And I'm sure I've left things off, so please, people, mention it in the comments section. Sorry about this, we keep losing connection, but I'm going to keep plowing on. Hopefully we'll be okay. So normally the most nerve-wracking time for me is actually meeting the orchestra for the first time. And especially if it's a new orchestra and you don't know anybody. It's like going on a blind date. It's incredibly, there's this moment of uncertainty when you meet the person for the first time from both sides. The ensemble is obviously trying to size you up, and you have to immediately try to build a relationship with this group as fast as you can and set the tone right. So that those moments when you first meet the group are so crucial to set the tone for the rest of your project. So it's an incredibly important time, and this is something actually we really should cover in more detail, because I know so many people struggle with this, meeting the orchestra for the first time. If any of you who are watching, I know there are conductors who are watching, would have any questions about this aspect, about what do I do in that first rehearsal, how do I handle it, I'd love to hear from you. Or maybe you have coping mechanisms, please do share that with us. But basically, once the rehearsals start, it's all about organisation. How are you going to communicate your ideas to the orchestra? How are you going to receive from them? And how are we going to all work together to build a fantastic project so that we're really prepared for that first performance? So much of your thought process over the coming rehearsals and the coming days is spent in how am I going to use my time to the best that I can. The time is so short and it goes so fast. So being organised is super important, because you need the space to allow everybody to grow together, to learn the music together. If you're disorganised, it's very hard for people to really settle into the project and feel comfortable. So pacing is super important, and it depends where you go, because different orchestras work at different speeds. They rehearse at different times of day in different countries. If they're an established orchestra, obviously they have a certain culture that you're going into, so you also have to try to be very flexible and find the best way that works for each orchestra, because every orchestra is a different personality. And that's something we can certainly go into more detail on soon. But that is effectively what most of your energy will be spent doing during the rehearsal period. That's not to say there aren't other things going on during that period. There might be, again, social media. There might be interviews going on. You may be going for meetings with the concert organisers, the orchestral management, the soloist. They might have a dinner here and there. And hopefully, if you're in a place where you might know some people, not all the time, but sometimes, the world is so small, there's friends everywhere. So there may be like dinners that you may go out for with friends in a different location. That's one of my favourite things now, is when I go all over the world, there's always somebody that I know in a different city that I can maybe have lunch with or have dinner with. And it makes the loneliness of a conductor's life travelling a lot better, to be able to see people all over the world. Obviously, the dream scenario is when you're working in your home city and you can just go home to your family, especially for an introverted extrovert. But let me know your experiences as touring musicians, or even if you work in a job where you're travelling all the time, how you cope with that aspect of being kind of away from home. So that rehearsal period is super crucial to getting everybody ready for what you've been invited to do, which is the icing on the cake, which is the tip of the iceberg, which is what people think a conductor does, which is the performance. And normally on the concert day, there'll be a final dress rehearsal. People don't necessarily dress in their concert dress, but we seem to call it that, or it might be called a staging rehearsal. people have different words for that, but effectively on a concert day there'll be a final rehearsal and then obviously the performance. So every conductor is different, and I see other conductors have joined now. I'd love to know how you handle a concert day. There's different stages to a concert day. There's the period when you wake up before that last rehearsal. You've got that time to handle. You've got the last rehearsal to handle. Then you have the period between the last rehearsal and the start of the concert to deal with. And then you actually have the performance. And then the final part is post-performance. So you've got all these stages on a concert day, and it's sort of like a roller coaster and how you handle that. And I'd love to know what other conductors and other musicians do on a concert day. For me, it's all about conserving energy. So before that final rehearsal, I try to have quite a relaxed morning, or if the rehearsal's in the morning, obviously just take it easy before the rehearsal. Try to eat well on the day. Some conductors, they can't eat, there's too much adrenaline. How do I handle the last rehearsal? Again, it's all about conserving energy. It's an opportunity just to fine-tune things with the orchestra, not to exert too much energy. If this is the only rehearsal, which sometimes it can be with some orchestras where you get to actually go into the concert venue, it's the opportunity to really listen to the acoustic and make sure the balance is right. But ultimately that final rehearsal is just a little bit of fine-tuning, but keeping the energy low so that everybody is ready and raring to go for the performance. And then once that's finished, I think this is the most relaxed point for me of any project, is once the rehearsals are over. It's like there's this sort of weight off my shoulders at this point. And because the rehearsal's over, all we've got to do now is just perform and share our joy of music with the public. I don't know what other conductors feel like, but certainly for me, that is the most relaxing point, is once all the rehearsals are over and we're ready for the concert. So during this time, I like to have a nice meal. Normally I have like pasta before a concert. That for me just gives me the energy I need. It's not, some people might find that too heavy, but for me, that keeps me going and gives me the energy I need for the performance. It's comforting, and I feel really relaxed. I might just take a little bit of quiet time, and then it's time to do the concert. I'd love to know, some of you guys, your pre-performance rituals, whether you play in the orchestra, what you like to do before the concert to get yourself ready, or if you're also conducting concerts as well, maybe you have a favourite meal, maybe you like to have a little chocolate beforehand. I don't know what it is, but let us know. And then obviously the concert is this amazing time where we get to share the music with the audience, and every concert is different, the atmosphere is different, the hall is different, the orchestra can be in different moods, in different performances, anything can happen, and that's just the joy of it. And that normally just flies by. And then you've got to handle what happens after the concert. And there's still more things that a conductor needs to do after the concert. We may have to meet the public. We're going to be talking with musicians after the concert. Hopefully not too much about how it went, but just, hopefully there was a good vibe after the concert. I'd love to know everybody's experiences. Generally, most concerts there's a good vibe, but sometimes it might not be the case. It really depends on the event and how the whole project has gone. You may have to go for a dinner or for a reception following the concert, and there could be other things like that need to be done. Photos with members of the public, chatting with the public. I love to speak with people after the concert and find out what they thought. And that time after the concert, it's really important, because it is a time where we can connect with people. Sometimes being a conductor, especially for the public, I think it can seem quite remote, and actually that's something that I really would like to sort of break those barriers. So actually having an opportunity to talk to people after the concert is one way. We can obviously discuss many other ways during a concert that conductors and performers can actually break that barrier and just bring each other closer together. And I'm sure that many of you who conduct do find ways to connect with the public in a more informal manner. And I find that actually really does help concert goers to feel closer to the musicians, and ultimately that just makes the whole experience more joyful for everybody. But that's a big part of post-concert. And I don't know how many of you who are performers feel, but I certainly can't just go back to my hotel or back to my house after a concert and just go straight to bed. There's certainly a winding down period that everybody needs after the sort of elation of performance. So for me, whether that's just relaxing with the family, or taking a phone call if I'm away, or going for another sort of light meal or something, there's always that time after a concert. And then following that's the end. We travel either on to our next project, which the timeline has been exactly the same from the invitation, the preparation, and now we're going to travel to our next project to start rehearsing that, and then it all starts again. Or you might go back to your home, and then you've got a little bit of time at home to do some more preparation there before you go on to your next project. But even though you might be going on to your next project, the previous project hasn't quite finished yet. There's still work to be done, and that's the follow-up. So for conductors, after you've done a project, we also are looking to follow up. We want to find out, how the organisation felt it went, how we felt it went. We've got a lot of reflecting to do after the week. We will be in touch again with the organisation. There might be things like recordings that we want to get to see, maybe even photos from the concert. So there's still a conversation going on with the organisation that we've just worked with. And obviously we want to find out, I said, especially if it's a new orchestra that you've gone to, which is kind of like a blind date that first time. We want to see if there's going to be a second date. So the way that happens is different with every organisation. And this is actually a really hard part of the career of a conductor. If you've got an agent or you've got an artist manager working for you, that can be something that they can help you with. But even for them, and if there are any agents or artist managers who watch this, it would be fascinating to know a little bit of their process and how they go about doing that, because it's not easy for them either. They're working on behalf of you, but if you don't have one, those conversations have to be done by you, the conductor. You've got to figure out, okay, did I enjoy that project? Did they enjoy that project? And do we think we're going to be able to work together again? And then how is that going to happen? How are we going to negotiate that? And the timing for that is quite precarious. So that, even though you might have moved on and you've got to start studying and working for your next project, or you might be in the middle of several other projects, those things are also still going on. So the organisation of all of this and all of these activities is how a conductor's life works. It really is not as simple as standing on the podium and giving those concerts. That really is literally a tiny bit of the tip of the iceberg. So what we're going to do over the coming weeks is we will go into more detail on all of these things. If you've watched this live stream and there's any aspect of a conductor's life that you would like to know more about, please do let me know, because I'd love to structure the coming live sessions based upon your feedback. But there's just so much there. I've missed things out. There may be different scenarios with other people, other conductors who are working in a totally different scenarios to the way that I work, and we'd love to explore those aspects too. But I hope you'll join me next Sunday at the same time, and I think we will have a plan for next Sunday, which is we're going to look at what goes into preparing a score ready for that first rehearsal, because that is so crucial and it takes up the bulk of a conductor's work. Any questions about that, let me know. Thanks for joining, and hope to see you next week. Take care, everybody.